There are a couple of ways to look at this South Carolina team. They're either much more dangerous than you thought or much worse than you thought.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Alabama internet legend Jimmy Stein. That's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We'll talk about FanDuel in just a little bit. Want to thank you every day for being every day. Thank you, newbies, for being here today. And thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen every single day. You guys are literally the best. So, Jimmy, I was looking at South Carolina because that is our next opponent. And, I mean, on the surface, I picked up an old Lindy's magazine, like this one right here, right? And I was just flipping through because I like to look back and, see how people do with their predictions. And when you're reading about South Carolina, you're thinking, gosh, this team, it's going to be pretty good. And then even now, I mean, you can talk about their record being 3-4, and you can say, well, I still got Lenora Sellers, and their losses are kind of explained. I mean, losing at Missouri, no shame in that. We kind of almost did it. Losing at LSU at night, a lot of people do that. Losing at home to Vandy 31, the score is bad, but losing to Vandy when you lose your quarterback is not the worst. And then their other loss is, I'm forgetting, help me.
Oklahoma.
Oh, Oklahoma. Losing at home to Oklahoma when Oklahoma is right in the middle of the playoff hunt. Every team they've lost to is legitimately still in the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
However, let me just read off a few things. So then I went to like a South Carolina site. This is from their 24/7 site. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm feeling a little better. They are averaging 14 points a game. That's 129th nationally and last in the SEC. They have a total, Jimmy, of 12 offensive touchdowns this year. A total.
That's not many.
They played 7 games. And
when you can name all the touchdowns by, oh yeah, that's Bob's touchdown, and that was Tony's touchdown. Hey, remember Greg's touchdown? Yeah. I mean, because there's only 12. You can like name them all by the guy that scored.
Were they all Brady Brunch brothers or something?
Oh, is that where I was getting that from? I don't know.
Bob and Greg and
thought I was going to go with reindeer like Donner and Blitzen, but it would be too obvious.
More festive. They only of those 12, 7 of them are red zone touchdowns, which you're like, okay, well, at least they score in the red zone, but that is tied for 129th nationally, last in the SEC. Total yards per game, 298 yards per game, which is 127th nationally, last in the SEC. Yards per play, 5 yards a play. That's tied for 14th in the SEC and 96 nationally. Passing yards a game, 191, which is 102 in the country. Passing yards per attempt. This is where it gets kind of funky. It's 9th nationally with 9.3 yards per attempt. But what that kind of tells me, and again, I'm doing this on the fly, so help me understand. It's almost like it's saying we're taking a bunch of deep shots. We're hitting none of them. And the only time we score is when we actually have a long drive. And it should be noted, I mean, I think everybody knows this by now, that Mike Shula is their offensive coordinator. And he was the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers for Cam Newton when he won the MVP, was he not? So I think that perhaps Shane Beamer and company were looking at Mike Shula and saying, hey, you can come in here and he's not Cam, but he's pretty close. I mean, he's college-wise, and maybe you can do that with him, and none of that has come to fruition.
Well, they have a significant, in terms of why, they have significant injuries on the offensive line. That's going to affect the game this weekend. It's affected all their games. Their left tackle, who's by far their best offensive lineman, he's out. The left guard, who's their second best offensive lineman, though he's a freshman, he's one of the better freshmen in the country, but he's been hurt, and he is questionable for the Alabama game. He's been out the last couple weeks, I believe. They've had other injuries up front. So that's the chief problem is the offensive line. It's been so bad they fired the offensive line coach mid-season, although I'm not sure why he's getting all the blame in the sense that the personnel wasn't good and the personnel that they had is hurt. But I guess you had to give the fans a pound of flesh or something. So they fire the offensive line coach mid-season. That's the number one problem. The number two problem is they just simply didn't spend on wide receivers. They have very average wide receivers. Now, Vandrevius Jacobs, their leading receiver, he's okay. He's okay. He's their leading receiver, 50 yards a game. And that's it. The second leading receiver is Nick Harbor, who I've been saying since day one is playing out of position, but he wants to play wide receiver. He's their second receiver at 40 yards a game.
Where would you have him? I mean, I'd have him at
Pass
defensive
rusher.
end potentially.
Pass rusher. Pass rusher. That's what I thought.
Now, let me say this too. That is also a monstrous mistake. Like, that's sort of Alabama not using Derrick Henry enough back in the day to me. I mean, it's like Nick Harbor should never be in the words Nick Harbor in the sentence second in the team in anything should be. He should be first in all, whatever he was doing. He should be first. If you want to play him
at running back,
you want to play him at running back, he should be leading the team in rushing. You want to play him at wide receiver, he should be leading the team in receiving yards, catches. You want to play him at tight end, he should be leading the team. You want to play him at pass rusher, he'd probably be leading the team in sacks. He is a freakazoid. And to not have him doing something which is EST, the mostest on that team, is criminal.
Yeah, he's obviously their freakiest athlete in terms of size and speed. That's certainly true. But
that's another
second on the team, and he should have been playing, if he's going to play offense, heck, just give him the ball at running back or something. I mean, they just can't, they just don't get him the ball very much. And again, a lot of it's the offensive line. Rasul Faison, the running back, they fought very hard to get him. They had to fight the NCAA to get him and get him eligible. They did all that, and the end result, 7 games in, is 4.4 yards a carry, which isn't horrible. It's basically what Jam Miller has, but that's not a lot of production. We complain every week about our lack of production in the run game. Their running back situation is worse in the sense their best back has kind of Jam Miller type numbers. They have no other back with any numbers at all. And Alabama does get contributions from Daniel Hill that we'll talk about later and Kevin Riley and stuff. So they don't run the ball well. There's no one outside. The offensive line is absolutely dreadful. It all adds up to Lenora Sellers not having a good year at all. A lot of that is on Sellers. A lot of it is not because he has no cast. I've always compared Sellers to Jalen Milroe, which I mean is a compliment to both Lenora Sellers and Jalen Milroe. And I think this year is sort of proving that comp out in this sense. Look at Milroe's season last year, okay, and what he did last year. Now take away Ryan Williams. Take away Jeremy Bernard. Take away Tyler Booker, Parker Brailsford, and Caden Proctor.
God.
Then say, okay, now Jalen Milroe, now go out and perform. That's exactly what Sellers is doing right now. And that's what it would look like. I think Alabama fans can imagine Milroe without Ryan Germ, Proctor, Brailsford, Booker, and then go play. What do y'all think it would look like? It would look like what's going on at South Carolina right now.
It looks like a Mike Sula coached offense.
They just have no weapons to fire other than Lenore Sellers, who just can't do it all himself.
And he's been a little banged up. And
yeah, he has been banged up and on top of everything else. And then they play the schedule where, as Luke pointed out, they're only losing to teams that are in the playoff mix. And I'll say there's another way to look at what South Carolina's done. They beat Virginia Tech to open the year at a time when we didn't realize Virginia Tech was going to be this bad and probably weren't quite as bad as they turned out to be. But they beat Virginia Tech in the opener, at the time considered a pretty decent win. They play an FCS team the next week, and they didn't crush them, but they won handily, I think 38-10 over an FCS team. Then week 3, then Vanderbilt, that's when the wheels start falling off. But Vanderbilt's better than what we thought even at that time. I mean, like Luke said, it's no shame to lose to Vanderbilt. The score is alarming, 38-7, but they lose Lenora Sellers in the game and have to play a lot of the game with Luke Doty, who I think most fans listen to the show like, who is that? So they lose to Vanderbilt. They lost to Missouri, and we all realize how tough it is to play at Missouri. Alabama didn't go over there and have a walk in the park, right? South Carolina led Missouri 20-18 in the fourth quarter. So they're leading Missouri in the fourth quarter. That's hardly terrible. I think where people are saying, boy, South Carolina's awful, they're talking about the last 2 weeks when they play at LSU, and good luck with that. And secondly, Oklahoma, who's a major playoff contender. And they lost again home, and it was sort of ugly. That's why I think where we're at. Now, I expect Alabama to win similarly to how Oklahoma did a week ago. That's what it should look like on Saturday. But I would say overall, when you really parse the results, really haven't been that bad. Defensively, this is a fairly good team. Defensively, offensively, they still have Lenora Sellers. Vandrevius Jacobs is an SEC receiver. Nick Harbor is one of the freakier dudes around. They're not bereft. It's not enough, but it all starts with the problems up front. Their offensive line is as bad as some of the biggest Alabama critics think they're, you have your people online that think the Alabama offensive line is terrible. No.
Well, let me ask this.
South Carolina is terrible.
How many sacks do you think South Carolina's given up this year?
I think I know this number. Is it like 27?
26. But that is it's 133rd in the country. I don't know how many teams there are. That's got to be last. I mean, there might be 135.
When your offensive line can't function, what chance do you have at any level of football when the offensive line?
I mean, and you mentioned it. You mentioned this, like their running back has Jam Miller numbers. Okay, that's if you want to look on the surface stuff. But we know Jam Miller is much more important than that because he's great at blitz pickup.
Yep.
He gets you key numbers when you need them.
Yeah, I ain't trading Jam Miller for Rasul Faison.
Oh God, no. I mean, no. You'd have to give me several first-round draft picks and some cash consideration.
Faison was thought to be a big deal, in the transfer portal, and South Carolina had to fight to get him eligible. I think he was declared eligible the day before the season started.
You think they'll fight to get him ineligible now? Oh, man, let me tell you guys about Quo. We love Quo over here at Locked On Bama. One of the tools that makes a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with the new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications, and it works right through an app on your phone or computer. So no more carrying two phones and relying on a landline. I love how Quo, formerly known as Open Phone, lets you and your team share one number and collaborate on calls and text like a shared inbox. So no customer is left hanging. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started and get 20% off the first 6 months at QUO.com/LockedOnCollege. That's QUO.com/LockedOnCollege. You can even keep your existing number for free. Quo, no missed calls and no missed customers. Now, FanDuel, because they're the best. We know how much everybody loves FanDuel around here. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed live lines during the games. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started with FanDuel, which is a Jimmy Stein guarantee. So I'm probably the worst person in the world at putting topics over there to the right because my thing was, hey, why USC Light is better than you think? And we have spent the first segment destroying them.
They are a little better than you think.
But they are better than you think.
If you look at the week-to-week results, they're really not awful. Again, leading Missouri in the fourth quarter, and they lost the game. LSU, and they played good enough defensively to beat LSU, but offensively couldn't manage more than 10 points in Baton Rouge at night. I think so much of South Carolina's dreadful is just really how bad they looked last week. I mean, they didn't look good against Oklahoma, and at the same time didn't lose 50-0. I think it was 26-7, somewhere in there.
Oklahoma 26-7, yeah.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma had 7 sacks.
Well, that was a bad combo for them. I mean,
well, Oklahoma's the best defense in the country, by the way. Oklahoma's like number one in a lot of defensive categories.
Bad matchup. And let's also say this: Oklahoma's pass rush is better than ours. I don't think anybody can debate otherwise.
No, that's totally true. So it is a terrible matchup for them. But again, defensively, it's not like Oklahoma scored 50 and we know they're capable of doing that. I don't think South Carolina is absolutely horrid. I do think their offensive line is horrid, and they don't have the amount of skill position talent that most of the league has. But defensively, they're good. Lenora Sellers is dangerous. This is a team that beat Virginia Tech. Oh, we haven't even mentioned this. They crushed Kentucky. They played Texas. Kentucky played Texas to overtime. South Carolina crushed Kentucky. So we need to go into Columbia assuming we're going to play the team that crushed Kentucky. If we just walk in there assuming that we're going to play the team that looked bad against Oklahoma last week, then the Florida State thing can happen. Because I really think part of what happened in Tallahassee is we showed up to play a 2-10 football team.
Well, we showed up with smoking jackets and painted fingernails and emotional support animals and whatever. And I think we've sort of stopped a lot of that. We've said, okay, let's just go on and act like it's business. And I think that's helped. I mean, again, I'm not taking shots at any of those things. I'm not trying to, but it probably came off that way. But going back to South Carolina, like you said, one thing you and I mention all the time is that you play your best once, twice a year, you play your worst once, twice a year, and everything else is what you are. And I think South Carolina against Kentucky played one of their best. They may have one more best in them. I don't think they got any more than that. I don't even know if they got another best in them.
Yeah, I think last week was their worst.
Our worst was clearly Florida State. Okay. And, as weird as it may sound, I think one of our best was Louisiana Monroe.
I know. People are going to say Georgia because it's the best win. But just because it's your best win doesn't mean that's the best 60 minutes of football you played. I do think Monroe was up there. And simply because we talked about it at the time. How rare does Monroe get Alabama's best shot? And they did because they were eager to prove. I like the point Jake Crane made on our show the other day about how embarrassment is a great motivator for boys that age. And they played like they were embarrassed against Monroe. I do think that might have been as good as they played all year so far.
Yeah. And, by the way, there were a couple of folks who a lot of people loved Jake Crane being on the show. There were a couple of folks said, I can't watch because he's an Auburn. Let me tell you something. If you're watching this and you haven't watched that because he's an Auburn fan, which he admittedly is,
of course.
But I'll say this, of all the people, national people, Jake does the best at being objective without trying to be too harsh on his own team to seem objective. I think Jake is pretty honest about Auburn, win, lose, or draw. Now, whenever an Alabama fan hears an Auburn fan say something good about Auburn, we think, well, you're just a homer. But Jake only says something good about Auburn when there is literally something good about Auburn. He does not say, and he doesn't say bad things unless there are legitimate bad things. Some people overcorrect. A lot of people accuse Greg McElroy of overcorrecting, like trying so hard not to be a Bammer that he goes the other direction.
Yeah, it comes across that way. It does sometimes come across that way. But if people think Jake's not objective, they just simply don't watch a lot of Jake Crane, which is fine. I mean, not everybody's for everybody. We're not going to be for everybody either. But I think Jake is very objective, and he picked Alabama to win the national championship, which is the initial reason we had him on the show this summer. And he's been a really good, informative guest, and he's got interesting things to say about Alabama that I think are interesting takes on Alabama, and tends to be very optimistic about this Alabama team. So are we. And we'll have the prediction show tomorrow. And I think Luke and I are probably going to predict Alabama wins.
Probably.
We'll
but you're right.
And think about it.
Jake Crane didn't do like I did back in 2010. I was writing for the local paper in Ellick City. And about midway through the year, I said, Auburn's going to win the national championship. And everybody were like, most people were like, I can't believe you're such a Bammer. Why'd you do that? And there were a couple of my friends who were like, you only did that to jinx us, right? And I was like, oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I legitimately thought it, but I also was hoping, I was wish casting this would jinx you. I mean, so, and I don't think Jake Crane did that.
And a lot of my predictions don't work out, which is great news, because I think I remember saying this summer that one of my bold predictions was Alabama would go 10-2 with a loss at Georgia, wrong, and would lose at South Carolina, though South Carolina would not make the playoff. And now, obviously, I'm going to change that prediction this week as the season's gone along and South Carolina's had all those problems up front. I'm going to change that prediction. But I did say that this summer, which shows I felt at that time, and you were going through Lindy's. Lindy's didn't act like South Carolina was about to go 3-9.
No, they didn't.
South Carolina has just, between the injuries and I think a misread of some of their signings, just haven't been as good as previously thought. I thought they would be very good, finish around 8-4 is kind of what I thought for South Carolina. I think they're going to end up around 6-6.
The good news for you is people are still making so much fun of you for picking Arch Manning to be the next big thing that they have forgotten you picked Alabama to lose to Georgia. That's the best news you've heard all day.
Still wearing the Arch thing. Yeah.
You're not alone. You're not alone with the Arch thing.
He was probably the most popular Heisman pick by the pundits this summer.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's why they're pun. I was trying to say something funny. I couldn't even
pundits doesn't sound like it's a good thing.
It doesn't sound good.
It's supposed to be a good thing. I think it's supposed to be a positive thing to be a pundit, but it doesn't sound good.
A pundit by any other name would still be an idiot. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Plus Picks awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every single model. And like our players over here at Bama, we sweat every detail at Mazda. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Okay. Bringing this up because a couple of interesting just sidebar notes things. First of all, the college football nerds, I think it was them, they came out with a good video. Everybody keeps talking about, college football, there's so much more parity this year because of NIL or because of transfer portal. They said, one under-considered reason for the parity is the new clock rules, where it was a huge advantage for teams that had better players, bigger teams like Bama or Ohio State, when you still had the old college rules of clock stops on first downs every time. If you go out of bounds, the clock doesn't start till you reset the ball, all these kind of things. And there's some other things in there too they mentioned. But now with the time of possession rules, which are much more NFL-esque, see, the game is condensed. So if let's say a team that's an underdog by 15 points gets, like Vandy last year, they have a good first drive and then they get a pick six. They're up 14-0 before you know it, and the clock's moving faster. So then the favorite team has to move quicker, which could cause more mistakes, and you see how you get more upsets. I'm kind of a fan of the quicker clock and all that. Even though it probably is to Alabama's detriment on the whole. But what I'm not a fan of, and this is why the games are still lasting. You could say, why are the games still lasting as long? Because these deadgum reviews that they do all the time, and for just about no reason sometimes. And they have this obsession with getting every call correct when you can't even review everything. And on that same note, what is this obsession with getting stuff correct when you have, in that Auburn Georgia game, they mentioned there were 11 missed calls and 9 of them were really, 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 really bad. And so they have let Kim Williamson, they didn't let him go. They said he was permanently suspended, which I thought meant you're fired. I mean, if you say you're permanently banned from entering the facility in which you work, how are you not fired?
I'm not sure. about the Williamson story because I would like to see some reporting on it from like Yahoo or On3 or some sort of. I want to see reporting from them on it before I fully really understand what's happening there. But I'm impressed that the SEC is interested in managing some of the bad calls and admitting that there's a problem here, because it seems like there's been this giant problem and you hear nothing about anything being done to resolve it. At least this is something, at least this is some, it does show that, okay, we're aware of the problem and we're attempting to address it, because that ain't the only quote bad crew, in this league. And those aren't the only bad calls. So I'm just impressed with the SEC maybe doing something. But before I fully understand all the moving parts here, I would like to see a story that comes from somewhere other than the Yellow Hammer News, who I think initially broke this.
Yeah, and it is weird. Nobody else seems to have run with it yet.
Yeah, that's why I'm like,
and maybe they have, and I just hadn't seen it early this morning.
I want to wait and see here before.
I mean, it is a little bizarre, but it wouldn't shock me because some of the calls. I mean, I would have suspended I guess it was Ken Williamson. I'm not sure. Whoever the guy was that thought this was clapping, I would have suspended him because you can't do that. I know that Kirby probably made a mistake. He might have meant not to do it, but you did it. And here's the other thing, Jimmy. I don't know if you watched any NBA this past weekend. I think it was 2 nights ago. No, it was last night. I think it was last night.
The Tuesday night was the opening night.
It was 2 nights ago. Okay, it was 2 nights ago with Oklahoma City and Houston.
That's the first game.
Yeah. So the Houston player, after one of the overtimes, I think it was Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant got a rebound and tried to call timeout, like he did the symbol. But the official either didn't see it or another player realized they have no timeouts. So the other player sort of got in front of him. Or he realized, okay, that would have been a mistake. That would have been a technical. And then Oklahoma City would have gotten to shoot the free throws and get the ball and essentially win the game. But my whole thing was, if you accidentally call timeout, that is nobody's fault but yours.
That's still a timeout.
It's still and what about this? What if you had
can't just say, "Hey, I called a timeout, but I didn't mean it."
What if you accidentally called a timeout and you did need it? See, that's the whole thing with Kirby to me. He needed the timeout. So he should have called the timeout and then had his argument about, hey, you got to tell them to quit clapping. Okay, because Auburn did have a guy that was clapping or whatever, trying to, and he should have done that, but he should have been docked the timeout. In the end, that didn't matter. That was not the reason Auburn lost, and in fact, it didn't affect that drive at all because Georgia didn't score on that particular drive. But what it did was give credence to all the other bitching that everybody else has been doing about officiating. And again, some Tennessee people have said, some things about this last Alabama game. A Tennessee fan can't ever talk to me about officiating when I saw in 2022 somebody put crown to face mask of Bryce Young, who's about 140 pounds, soaking wet. He put crown to face mask, damn near killed him. And then the officials go, nah, that we don't think that's. I said, if that's not targeting, there is no targeting, which is fine with me, but you can't not call that.
That was a penalty before they invented targeting.
That should have been roughing the passer, not even targeting.
That was a penalty before they ever invented targeting, and it wasn't called when because of targeting. There should have been flags raining from the sky since the targeting rule. But even prior to targeting, that should have been called. Now, I'm even more upset the same game about the pass interference call on the Malachi Moore interception, which was to this day remains one of the most puzzling things in my life. Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
Was it Kool-Aid? I don't know why. It was Kool-Aid's pick. That's right.
Well, here's the other thing that worries me, and we'll get out of here. This has always worried me. When it started worrying me when I did a lot of coaching on my own, even before I had kids, I was coaching some little leagues because, I just wanted to be around those kind of sports. And I had this situation, my first team I ever coached, I thought that it was like a bunch of 8 and 9 year olds. And I thought the referee wasn't calling something. There was a kid on the other team who was literally throwing elbows. And he didn't understand what he was doing, but he was doing it. And I thought one of my kids was going to get hurt. And I told the ref he's either blind or stupid. Tell me which one it is. And so he threw me out of the game. And I realized I can't do that as a coach anymore. But it also made me think, I went up to him and apologized later. And I was like, I need to keep my head cooler. I said, but I see where some of these other guys come from. But the problem is when refs get attacked like that, especially on the little league level, but even in the SEC, NFL, whatever, and people are doxing these guys, you start if you're a ref, you're like, why am I doing this?
Why am I doing this? Yeah.
I mean, if you're in little league, you're doing it voluntarily. Usually, you might be getting $15 a game or something, but it's not worth the berating you get. And so I look at this Ken Williamson thing, and I'm like, look, we all admit he probably isn't a good official, and why the SEC can't do better than this, I don't know. But what I'm worried about is if we start firing all the officials who aren't any good, then we're going to have a referee shortage. And you can't play the game without referees.
I think what people want is that the SEC, much like goes to the NFL model of being the first league to have full-time officials that spend 365 days a year on officiating, to where when they're in the off season, they're training, they're watching tape. This is just what they do for their full-time profession. I think that is what needs to be done. Is that going to fix all the calls? No, because they have that in the NFL. And what do NFL fans do? Every Monday morning complain about officials' calls. We're still going to have that, but we'll have more confidence that these are the best people doing the best job they can. I think right now there's a lack of confidence in that.
All right, that's going to do it for today's pod. We'll be back tomorrow with the prediction show. And until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.